The Café on Maple Street. A gentle pause. Margaret Hayes stood behind the counter of her small cafe, wiping down the espresso machine with the same care she'd given it every morning for the past 7 years. The autumn light filtered through the front windows, casting warm shadows across the wooden tables she'd restored herself. Outside, the maple trees were turning gold, her favorite time of year. Soft breath. She was 52 now and content. Life hadn't gone the way she'd planned, but she'd learned that plans were just pencil sketches easily erased by time. When Daniel left all those years ago, she'd been pregnant and terrified. He was building an empire, he'd said. There wasn't room for a family. She'd believed him then. Young love makes you believe a lot of things. A moment of reflection. Her daughter Sophie sat at the corner table doing homework. Nearly 7 years old, with dark curls that caught the light in her father's thoughtful eyes, though Margaret tried not to think about that too often. Sophie was hers. They'd built a good life together, just the two of them, in this cafe that smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. The sound of a door opening. The bell above the entrance chimed softly. Margaret looked up, her practiced smile ready. Then time seemed to slow, the way it does when the past walks through your door uninvited. Daniel Morrison stood there, older now, with silver threading through his hair at the temples. He wore an expensive coat but looked somehow diminished, as if success had hollowed him out rather than filled him up. His eyes found hers and she saw something there she hadn't expected. Regret. A pause, heavy with meaning. Margaret, he said quietly. Just her name, but it carried 7 years of unspoken words. She set down her cloth, hands steady despite the sudden racing of her heart. Hello, Daniel. He took a tentative step inside. I was in town for a business meeting. I heard you had a cafe. I wanted to see you. Gentle, measured. Before Margaret could respond, Sophie looked up from her coloring book. Children have a way of sensing when something important is happening. She studied Daniel with the frank curiosity of the young, her head tilted slightly to one side. Mommy, she said, her voice clear in the quiet cafe. Why does that man look like me? A breath, a heartbeat. Margaret's throat tightened. In all her careful planning, in all the ways she'd imagined this moment, she'd never considered her daughter's simple observation. Children see the truth that adults try to complicate. Daniel's face went pale, then flushed. He moved closer, as if drawn by an invisible thread, and knelt down to Sophie's level, a respectful distance away. Hello? He said softly. What's your name? Sophie. Sophie Hayes, I'm almost 7. She paused, then with the directness only children possess, asked, Are you my daddy? A long, gentle pause. Margaret watched Daniel's face crumble, not in weakness, but in the way a dam breaks when it's been holding back too much for too long. His eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. I think I might be, he whispered. If your mom says it's okay to say so. Sophie looked at Margaret, her young face serious. Margaret felt the weight of the moment, understanding that her next words would shape her daughter's understanding of forgiveness, of second chances, of how imperfect people try to love. Softly, with warmth. She walked around the counter and placed a gentle hand on Sophie's shoulder. Yes, sweetheart. This is Daniel. He's your father. He had to be away for a while. Daniel looked up at her, gratitude and shame mingling in his expression. I built everything, he said, his voice breaking. A company worth millions, but I lost everything that mattered. I was wrong, Margaret. I was so wrong. A moment of grace. Margaret had spent years imagining what she'd say if he ever came back. She'd rehearsed angry speeches, cold dismissals, dignified rejections. But standing here, watching her daughter look at her father for the first time with recognition, she felt something unexpected, not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the soil where forgiveness might one day grow. Would you like some coffee? She asked simply. With gentle resolution. They sat together at Sophie's table, the three of them, while the autumn light moved across the floor. Daniel told Sophie about his work, speaking to her with careful respect. Sophie showed him her drawings, unself-conscious and generous in the way children can be when we don't teach them to be guarded. Margaret watched, her heart a complicated landscape of old pain and new possibility. She didn't know what would come next. Perhaps Daniel would become part of Sophie's life. Perhaps not. But in this moment, in her cafe that she'd built with her own hands, she felt something settle inside her. Final words, warm and steady. Life, she thought, doesn't always give us the endings we write for ourselves. Sometimes it gives us something more complicated, more real. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to let it, more kind. Outside, the maple leaves continued their slow dance to the ground, golden and beautiful. Letting go. Gentle fade. The end. Character count, 5,247.